want to tell people that there's 3 minutes?
Yeah, I got it. Unless you want, here's my list.
I'm not checking on you, I'm just saying, if there might be a few people here that need to know that.
Yeah, I will.
That, so,
All right, we ready?
yes.
Can we get started? Here. Run. Now ready? You started?
I did.
Oh, good evening. Good evening, everybody. This is. Thank you, Adam. Good evening, everybody. This is the March 12th meeting of the Needham Community Preservation Committee. I'm Dave Harrer, the CPC Chair. As a reminder, this meeting is being broadcast to the town's YouTube channel and via Zoom. It's being recorded for publication, later viewing, and administrative purposes. All the members are here except for Jim Rosenbaum, so I'm not going to take a roll call. Tonight, we are going to hold our annual public hearing on the CPC applications. So I'd like to open that hearing. Now, the hearing tonight, okay. All right. The hearing tonight, we have 6 applications, so it's going to be a busy.
Is that better?
No, these microphones
This
are
is-
only for these are at home and recording.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'll speak louder. Yeah, okay. We have 6 applications to review tonight, so it's going to be a busy night. I wanted to review some of our guidelines for our public hearing that the committee has adopted. First, with regard to written statements, all written statements that have been received prior to this hearing have been provided to the committee members. After the hearing, we would receive additional comments, and if they're received no later than Monday, March 17th, we will incorporate those comments into the record. For each scheduled applicant tonight on the agenda, I will introduce the applicant and invite them to begin their presentation. We would like the applicants to limit their presentations to 5 or 10 minutes. After the presentation of a application, the chair will solicit public comment for that application. Public speakers should begin their remarks by stating their first and last name and town of residency for the record. All remarks should be addressed to the chair. Public speakers must only address topics within the scope of the CPC application that they are commenting on, and shall be out of order if they address other issues. Individual speakers should limit their remarks to no more than 3 minutes. Groups addressing the same topic are encouraged to consolidate their remarks and select a spokesperson to speak. If you agree with the previous speaker's comments, please do not hesitate. Please do not repeat the comment. And it's okay if you just say you agree with the previous comment. Finally, I'd like to note that public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between individuals and the CPC. It's an individual's opportunity to express an opinion on the applications before the CPC. Okay, with that being said, I would like to introduce the first presenter for the first application on the agenda, the Needham History Center and Museum Collections Storage Upgrade. And we have Gloria Grice from the Needham History Center.
Hey, thank you. I am, oh, okay. Thank you. I am Gloria Grice. I'm the Executive Director of the Needham History Center and Museum, and I am a Needham resident. Okay. The current application request is for funding from the CPC to install shelving. Oh, do I? for our main storage room, as well as to enhance dehumidification equipment in this basement storage area. Where am I aiming this?
Should be. Let me see if I can do this for you.
As I said, it's an ongoing project. The CPC has provided us with 2 other grants for this work in the past. So this is another phase in what for us has been a long-term effort. Thank you. The requested CPC funding will provide for the cost of materials needed for this project. We are requesting $46,712. This would be shelving and other storage furniture, humidity control in an area where most needed, and some of the labor to assemble and install. All other costs totaling an estimated $8,525, which would include creating the work plan and layout, staff hours, removal of collections from storage during shelving installation, the return and reorganization of the collections upon completion, and subsequent ongoing collections organization, documentation, and access are all the responsibility of the Needham History Center. Okay, there's our boxes. When we first moved into this facility in Central Avenue, the public library had just been renovated, and they gave us a large number of their old book shelving that they had just replaced. And we were very happy to have these, and they served us well for many years. However, their size and configuration is incompatible with the sizes of the archival containers that we use for our collections. So the use of space is very inefficient. These boxes were the result of those first 2 CPC grants. We've moved the collections into these archival boxes. They are properly padded, supported, cleaned, and in lovely shape. However, the shelves can't hold the boxes. One of the library shelves can hold 2 of the flat textile boxes. Those are those big ones stacked up on the right-hand side. Or 2 of the banker style cartons, no, not yet, sorry, which are the ones stacked up on the left-hand picture. As proposed, the new shelves would be able to hold up to 12 of the textile boxes and 8 of the cartons, and would allow us to shelve all of the boxes that are currently on the floor. Right now, although the majority of the collections have been moved into these boxes, the objects themselves have become increasingly difficult to access. Since we are unable to make efficient use of the current shelving, the boxes have to be stacked, and as a result, they form high piles and fill the current aisles between the shelves. So it is currently difficult to reach objects in the nearer piles and nearly impossible at this point to reach the objects in the piles farther down the aisles. This impedes both staff and public access and limits our ability to use these objects for teaching and exhibit, which is, after all, their purpose. This is also a problem for preservation, since we cannot accomplish the routine monitoring for pests and deterioration of the stored collections, since we can't reach them. Okay, next one. Okay, so this is, you can see on the left, the aisles are basically filled with these stacks of boxes. We're also asking for vertical racks, which are intended to store the framed works. And on the right, you see some of those stacked up in a heap, many of which have plaster detailed frames, which are quite fragile. The vertical racks would allow us to store these with structural support and some separation to minimize the damage to the frames. And finally, there are objects in our collections that have not yet been moved into the archival storage containers and are still subject to damage from light, dust, and movement. This work is ongoing, and it is not a part of this grant request. But most of these objects remain unhoused because of the difficulty of reaching them in the current storage conditions. This is detrimental to their long-term preservation, and rehousing them into appropriate containers is a priority that can be facilitated by this grant request. Okay, this is a floor plan of our second floor. The area in question is the main attic storage room, which is that leftmost room, the one with the red and blue shelving, and that's a schematic of where the new shelving, or how the new shelving is going to lay out. And accompanying the budget statement, those are labeled, so they match up to the proposed budget. And these are the kinds of units we are proposing to purchase: heavyweight, modular shelving, metal shelving. Those units come in a very wide variety of widths and heights and depths, so we can get the ones that work most efficiently with the boxes we have, rather than trying to just fit them in, wherever they'll fit on the shelves. And that blue carton holder unit is what we would use for the framed works in order to keep them upright and padded. There are two aspects that we are required to address when requesting CPC funds for historic preservation projects. The first is preservation standards. All preservation projects must adhere or move in the direction of the Department of Interior standards for managing and preserving museum property. Although we have good progress on bullets D and E, this request will help to advance us on bullets A, B, and C. And as you can see from the pictures I showed you, current storage furniture is not adequate to the volume of the collections. There is not enough space to manage current collections, much less future growth. There is no possibility of safe movement or access as currently stored. And as I mentioned, this also impacts pest control and condition monitoring, since there is not the ease of access needed to spot check the shelves and boxes. And the second requirement is that the CPC funds are public money and must therefore be used for public benefit. For us, this is both our mission and our goal. Just as an example, in fiscal year 2024, we hosted 6 museum tours for the senior residences and for the Charles River Center. We've offered 14 free public programs, 20 elementary school classroom visits, 60 in-person research visits, and an equal number of requests via email and social media by local residents, middle and high school students, college students, news stations, the Natick Praying Indians, the Needham Channel, the Needham Community Revitalization Trust Fund, and a number of others. We provided information for town committees, including the Conservation Committee, the Select Board, the Local Historic District Bylaw Study Committee, the Town Seal and Branding Committee, and the School Department, including the renovation of the Emery Grover Building. And we sent out 45 weekly history stories to subscribers, members, non-members, via email and social media. All of this for us involves making our historic facilities functional for their intended use, which is another one of the Department Interior's and the CPC goals. In addition to the physical assets, such as the schoolhouse, providing the services listed above depends upon our ability to access the objects in archival collections for exhibit, study, and reference. For example, our collections of prehistoric and Native American artifacts are of interest to the tribal historians of the Natick and Punkapog Praying Indians, as well as to Needham fourth graders studying Native American cultures. Thank you, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Gloria. Any questions from our audience here? Yes.
Jean McKnight, Needham resident, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, although this was not discussed by the League of Women Voters Board. But I want to let people know, I love the phrase, preserve the treasures of Needham's past. About a year ago, and following a big project on the part of the League to organize its papers going back almost 100 years, which are very much intertwined with the history of the town of Needham. Those well-organized papers in large books were presented to the Needham History Center on their promise to preserve them and to make them available for research. And I mention this because this is exactly the kind of thing that's going to be helped by this project.
Thank you. Anybody else? We have somebody online.
Natalie, I've given you a request to unmute. Are you able to unmute yourself, Natalie? I think I've.
I'm so sorry. I wanted to comment about something else, not this issue.
Okay.
Any other comments? No? Okay, let's, thank you, Gloria.
Thank you very much.
Let's move on to the next project, the, I don't know, Marshall or Reg, if you want to introduce this, or should I introduce
Marshall can go ahead.
myself?
Yeah, Dave Herrera and Debbie Anderson, the Needham Conservation Commission, for the Trail Signage Improvement Project.
Okay, thank you. I am also a member of the Needham Conservation Commission, and so my presentation here is in that context. And Deb Anderson, our Town of Needham's Conservation Director, is also here. So I wonder if I can get this. Okay. So Needham is very fortunate to have over 25 miles of trails at various sites. Some of these trails are in good condition. Some need some improvement, but a lot of the trails have very poor, inconsistent signage. And that is the subject of this project. Oops. Yeah, this project was generated, the concept of this project was generated in a report that was funded by the CPC Open Space Study, and they reviewed various spots around town and recommended that a consistent and improved method of signage be developed. Oops. Yeah. We go to the next one, I guess. Yeah. So the goals of this project are to increase the visibility and use and safety and user experience for the Needham trails. And again, I mentioned the goal of providing some uniformity and a standard appearance for the various signs around. Here's an example of what we're kind of moving towards. Excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. There are 11 different locations for trails around town. They're listed here. Some of these are more complicated than the others. The two areas that are have the most trails are Ridge Hill and the Town Forest, and the project would focus on those. But there are also other areas around that require, some upgrades. I got a few slides here just show you the existing conditions. These are the entrance signs of Town Forest and Ridge Hill. You could hardly see them from the road. I think that the improvements that are planned would, make these spots visible and maybe attract more visitors. The kiosks are kind of old and dilapidated. This project would entail adding some new kiosks as well as rehabbing some of the existing kiosks. Wayfinding is totally inconsistent. Here's an example of the variety of wayfinding signs we have. There's even some that weren't even put up by the town, like the one on the right, the bicycle was done at the town forest, and I guess it's some local bicycle enthusiast developed his own trails. So, and then the various trailheads are in pretty poor shape. Some of them, you don't even know it's a trailhead. So, as I sort of alluded to before, the scope of the improvements that are under this project would be entrance signs, kiosks, trailhead signs, intersection signs, trail markers, and as well as some miscellaneous signs. We'd update the website and the maps, and there are a handful of trail improvements that we would also look at. It's an example of some of kiosks that we would entertain. There's a brand new kiosk out here in front of the Reservoir Trail. It gives you an idea of what we're aspiring to. Trail intersection signs are very important. This would be in a case of where one trail meets another, and you can direct people in some manner so that they don't get lost. You'd be surprised how many people have said they've been lost in some of the trails, especially the town forest. One of our members had a medical emergency. So yeah, it's a problem, and we hope that this project will fix that. So there's an example of some trailhead signs that we're looking at. I have some examples of the signs that I'll bring out if you're interested. We were planning on using the type of signs that the trustees of reservation uses because they're colorful, they're inexpensive, and they will last a long time. There's various miscellaneous signs that we would consider. Interpretive signs, this is important. Plan on using QR codes to cue people into information about various features. For instance, how many people here know what an esker is? Yeah, so we'll explain that in some interpretive signs. And then, of course, I mentioned, these aren't the best examples, but entrance signs on some of the key spots so that people driving by and, others can see that this is a resource area. And then finally, I mentioned trail improvements, some examples here, bog walks that would, keep people from, going through the mud and, destroying the wetlands. Trail bridge, this is an example of a trail bridge that we built just a couple months ago out at Ridge Hill. And then trail steps, which in a couple areas, this would make the navigation of a trail a lot easier, especially for older people like myself. The cost for this project is about a little more than $100,000, broken down in these categories. As you can see, most of the money is for the signposts and installation of the signs. This project will entail a lot of staff, volunteer, and contractor involvement, especially volunteers. There's so many opportunities for volunteers to work on this project. We have a lot of people and groups that have expressed interest in this project, and we haven't kicked off our volunteer effort yet, but that's something forthcoming should the committee and the town decide to support and fund this project. Project schedule, we'd be mostly doing the work this late spring, summer, in through the fall. we do plan to meet with some, a group that's been previously formed, a trail advisory group, to get their input and finalize the scope of the work. So, any questions? Hi, you can,
Bruce Eisenhower, recently live near the town forest. I just totally 100% support this proposal. It's just long overdue, really necessary. There's much confusion, especially on the town forest and on Ridge Hill. Just everything that you said, but I don't think many people realize how bad it can be. There are also the existence of what I call road trails. These are trails that have been created by the mountain bikers. They cause erosion. They put up their own trail signs, which are aesthetically ugly. And people do occasionally when they're walking, I've known from experience, get lost. They get on these trails. They're not marked for walking. They're not part of the official trail system. And you could use signage to keep people off those trails, which might be part of the project, hopefully. Because they're really bad, they're really destroying the town forest, and less so, but still on Ridge Hill. Thank you.
all right, thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. You know, we were going to consider closing some trails as appropriate. One of the groups that we hope to get involved is the local Trail Bike Association, the New England Mountain Bike Association, and get their cooperation to help us and also enforce any trail closures that would come out of this project.
Yeah, I'm Josh Coleman. I'm actually here for a different matter, but this one's pretty close to my heart. I hike a lot. I'm out in the woods a ton. I've gotten lost in the town forest without them before. It's really difficult to navigate down there. My only comment about this is hugely important. I would love to see when these are designed to fall in with something like the Appalachian Mountain Club. They have a standardized design where all the trails mean sort of the same thing to any hiker that would come in and see them. Just so that we don't run into this issue later on down the road. We have some weird specialized design that's been updated and it just ends up not working well. It's my only comment I'd like to say.
All right, thank you.
Jean McKnight, I'm a member of the board of the Needham Land Trust, although speaking for myself, I'm very much in favor of this as a person who, like this gentleman, likes to walk in our woods. But I also, as a former member of this Community Preservation Committee, I ask whether the funding for this comes out of the open space budget, bucket, I should
Yeah,
say.
the answer is no. No, this would not qualify as an open space project. If the work were to be done on land that was purchased with CPC funds, then yes, we could do this. But as a matter of fact, none of the areas that we would consider were purchased with CPC funds. So this
qualifies under the recreation.
Exactly, yes.
Recreation improvement. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody online?
No.
Okay, great. Let's move to the next project. Maybe you want to introduce this project?
Hi, I'm Maureen Callahan. I'm vice chair of the CPC, and I'm going to introduce the next application that we have, which is from the Charles River Center to develop 3.5 acres of land at 59 East Militia Heights Drive in Needham to serve as an integrated housing and education complex where adults with intellectual disabilities can live side by side with people without intellectual disabilities. I'd like to bring Anne Marie Bajwa, she's already at the table, President and CEO of Charles River Center, who will provide some more details about this.
Would you like it queued up now?
Please.
Phil, you probably know how to do this. I'd like to introduce Phil Green. He's the project manager from the Planning Office of Urban Affairs. He's with me. So we've called this project the Charles River Heights with our new logo. So if you could proceed. As Maureen said, we are developing a affordable housing project that is in line with our mission of the Charles River Center. Oh, I didn't state my name, sorry. Anne Marie Bajwa, the Charles River Center. The Charles River Center is located in Needham, but I'm a Bridgewater resident. So the mission of this Charles River Heights development is to provide inclusive housing and a full spectrum of support services to empower people with disabilities to live independently and achieve their personal goals and actively participate in their communities, which is completely in line with the Charles River Center's mission. We developed this project because there is a current challenge. There's a shortage of housing, affordable housing for folks, particularly with the autism, who could live on their own but do not currently because they need basically a flexible array of staff supports to be able to be successful to live on their own. So that's what this development is proposing to do. We're going to wrap around the type of supports that they need to be successful to live on their own. And so as I said, this is an inclusive housing with flexible, integrated support services. So the integration part is when they become part of their community. So as you'll see, this development, as Maureen said, is going to be integrated with people from the general community as well, not just the people with disabilities that we serve. So we're creating 86 new affordable housing units. And the most important thing to remember is about 50% of those units will be occupied by the Charles River Center clientele, and 50% will be from the general community, all within who adhere to the housing standards of the AMI. And that makes this development one of the largest development in Massachusetts with this level of integration. You often see only a few apartments in a big complex that are designated for folks with disabilities. But 43 handicap accessible units will be created in this. And as I talked about the wraparound support services, it's an array of services, whatever they need to help them be successful to live on their own for probably the first time. So it's remote monitoring during the overnights and also for medical reasons, medication administration and so forth, and also supports with clinical services as needed. There'll be health and safety monitoring. Some people might have a medical condition that needs to be monitored. This is when we can really call on some technology that is really all over the news, booming right now. College navigation. Some folks who live here may be interested in attending a community college or a college to get a certificate program. Career exploration and job support. To be on your own, successfully living on your own, you need money, you need an income, you need to have a job. So we will provide that support. Also peer support and adult companion. Often folks with autism tend to isolate. And they will stay by themselves and not really integrate with the general public. But we will provide the supports to do that. So we're also going to be providing transportation services like a shuttle bus. And in fact, North Hill had said that they would be interested in maybe working with us on that and doing an integrated shuttle bus, which is exciting. There will also be 5 affordable apartments to the Charles River Center staff. This is for the emergency situations on the overnights. I thought that was important in the beginning, at least, to be able to do that. So then there'll be a community center. So again, part of our mission is integration into the community. That means not only are folks accessing the community resources on a regular basis, like we all do, but also inviting the community in to this development to be part of it. So some of the things we thought about is a commercial grade kitchen and dining space. We often get requests for various town clubs to use our facility at the Charles River Center. This would be a state-of-the-art location where they could do that, maybe some swing office space. We also thought about, outdoor exercise green space. There's going to be a walking path around this development, but we also thought maybe do integrated outdoor yoga under a covered, thing, covered space or things like that, cooking classes or something along those lines. So this model is very exciting to us and should be to the community because it really is cutting edge in terms of its the creation of this innovative model that can be replicated across the state because there is a huge unmet need in this population. And I'm going to turn it over to Phil Crean to talk about some of the details of the project. So, yeah.
I'll take this from you. Thanks so much. I'm just going to quickly go over the project details, high level, just talk a little bit about the design, the budget, our timeline, and some of the other issues that have come up while we've been discussing. So 86 apartment homes, a community, and 4 buildings. Those 3 buildings to the front of the site are going to be single-story structures. They'll each have 6 studio apartments with a community space, which is very integral to CRC's programming, to have these places where residents can commingle and get out of their apartments. And then there'll be a principal structure, that 3-story anchor building in the center, Building A there, that will have 68 units of 1-bedroom studios and 2-bedroom units, as well as the community space that Anne Marie mentioned, and amenity spaces for the residents, more common spaces, fitness center, elevators, that sort of amenity space. We have 61 parking spaces, which is, falls in line with what we think the vehicle demand is going to be with Charles River Center residents. About half of them drive and half do not. And as Anne Marie mentioned, looking into that shared transportation to help get people out of vehicles. This is the bird's eye view of as you're looking at the site. Our goal is to create like a community that's almost at a small neighborhood scale, where you have those single-story structures with the 3-story building to the rear. One of the advantages of this site is we have a lot of really good woods surrounding the property. So at 3 stories, so you shouldn't really see it from below there. It's kind of tucked away in its own little area, but our goal is really to integrate the residents here into the broader community, and we think that designing it in this way, where it's a community scale and integration, will really accomplish that goal. In terms of a budget, this is this for affordable housing. This is a pretty your sources are pretty typical here. We're the lion's share of how we're going to pay for this is going to be from federal and state low-income housing tax credit equity. That's equity from investors, which will likely be banks. Think of like a Bank of America, a Chase. Those will be the purchasers of those credits. Executive Office of Housing and Livable Community subordinate debt. There'll be some portion of that will be the subordinate debt, and I think we mentioned at our previous meeting, that we do have some funds that were set aside as part of a pilot program with the Economic Development Bill that was passed last fall. We'll have a permanent loan that will support the property. Charles River Center will put in some funds as a sponsor loan. There's the $3.5 million request before this committee, and then the balance of that, the sources that we have are from DOER funds and Mass Save program funds. As far as uses, Charles River Center purchased the property back in 2023 for $5 million. We have our construction cost estimate, and the balance of it will be soft costs, developer fee, and then capitalized reserves. And so just a few, we wanted to just talk a little bit about some of the comments from the first hearing that we had, which was just on income averaging. We know that's like that was suggested. We just wanted to reiterate, this is we're happy to explore that and bring that up with the state, but the reason we're not underwriting to it at this time is that that's part of their guidelines. They don't want us underwriting, assuming income averaging this early in the process. And I haven't, we were looking to see if they've updated that guidelines. It doesn't seem like it, so that's why we've continued not to assume income averaging at this time. The CRC staff reserve, we appreciated the creative approach to writing those down as a concession. We just don't want to be in a position where we get to closing and our lenders and investors, don't approve that approach, and then we have to come up with a way to get to the closing line at the end there. And then just in terms of some of the proposed funding conditions, loan versus grant, I think for low-income housing tax credit purposes, a loan would work. I think it's probably even preferred by the investor down the road because there's certain rules around grants. And then just wanted to also flag repayment of cash flow. That will have to be a discussion with we're amenable to that, but that would have to be a discussion with the state and the town, because there's typically in a low-income housing tax credit waterfall, there's provision where the state receives some portion of cash flow. So we just want to make sure that all parties are getting what they need out of that. So just wanted to just bring those points up here while I have everyone's attention. And then I just wanted to talk about, lastly, to talk about our community engagement, like outreach efforts. Charles River Center created a website that went live, I believe, this week. It has an FAQ, which we're going to be building upon as we continue to meet with community members. And there's a form there where folks that are interested in learning more about the project can fill out their information and reach out, and then we can get back to them with questions, comments. I left the URL at the top there. And that will wrap it up for me.
Thank you.
Hope that was 10 minutes.
No, that was great.
It wasn't 10 minutes.
It's a lot, it's a lot of information.
Yeah, so, anybody wish to comment on the project?
Just for people's education, planning office.
State your name, please.
John Hessian.
You can come to speak to the microphone, actually. So people.
I have a booming voice as a soccer coach here.
Well,
So John Hessian, Needham resident, 42 years, member of the FinCom for 4 years. And, full disclosure, I'm on the board at Charles River. This is an extraordinary project with a developer who is very experienced at this. This is an agency of the Archdiocese of Boston. They are one of the largest nonprofit developers of affordable housing east of 495. More than a year and a half has gone into the planning of this to develop integrated communities. If you see the type of individual that's involved in this is a high-functioning adult. Many of these people are brilliant at math and scientists, but they're sometimes socially awkward. This is an extraordinary project and a commitment of resources that's just enviable in terms of what this can do for the town and what this can do for both people who need affordable housing, because half of the units will be devoted to it, as well as a community that's going to be underserved. People are thrown out at the age of 22 in this state if they have autism. They have to fend for themselves. This is a dramatic improvement in their lives.
My name is Phil Roby, resident of Needham, and
Could you come up and maybe speak in the mic?
it's just so that people at home can actually hear what.
I wanted to just, again, my name is Phil Roby, a Needham resident. I've been affiliated with Charles River for over 30 years as a board member and volunteer prior to that. I want to make sure that everybody watching this on TV and so forth recognize that Charles River has been around since 1956. So it's been an organization that has brought many, many good things to many, many people, certainly in the developmentally disabled area. And I think the investment in support of the Charles River Center is very important. We service over 900 to 1,000 families with supports.
We have 30 homes that we work with that have individuals living in those homes. And as I said, we've been around for close to 70 years. So it would be a great investment for the town of Needham to support this through our CPC program. So thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Rich Neckes. I've been a Needham resident for about 45 years. And I think I have a unique perspective on this project, given that about 45 or 50 years of my career has been in this particular industry, serving people on the spectrum, people with autism and people with developmental disabilities at different organizations. And having had that experience, and the last couple of years, I've been on the board of Charles River, and this is a top-notch, highly professional organization. And as I said, I'm comparing this to organizations that I've worked with, organizations I've had associations with. If anybody can do a job like this, it's Charles River, and it's Anne Marie, who's a spectacular CEO. There is an absolute critical need for folks on the spectrum and folks with developmental disabilities. Many of them living with their adult children. They're living with their elderly parents who are getting older and older, who can't support them anymore. And until they pass away or they're totally debilitated, they can't get the services they need because the housing out there just doesn't exist. This is really going to fix, not all of that, of course, but it's going to make a really huge dent in that incredible, difficult situation. The other piece of this, which has already been mentioned, is the integration. As John mentioned, people get somewhat isolated. And it's the social aspect that is sometimes the most challenging part for people with disabilities. In this particular situation, they're going to be living side by side with folks. And the advantage is not only to the people with disabilities, there's a huge advantage for the people that don't have obvious challenges, which many of us, I'm sure, do. Notwithstanding myself, of course. So anyway, I strongly encourage the committee to approve this proposal. It's really, really, really important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Natalie?
Hello, is it my turn?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Natalie Blitz, and I'm a resident of Needham. While I commend the effort to support this specific population, I worry that the specific proposal does not support or fully consider the diverse needs of other individuals in Needham with disabilities. It's including my son, for example, who has profound autism and requires lifelong support. My son will not attend college, hold a job, or spend nights independently. He requires 24-hour supervision due to his high mobility and lack of danger awareness. As he approaches adulthood, it is crucial that we address the needs for a range of appropriate housing solutions that caters the various profiles of individuals with disabilities in Needham. I urge our town to commit to developing and promoting comprehensive housing solution that encompasses the need of all adults with disabilities, not just the high-functioning ones, and not just this selected group. And specifically, I have some questions. I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but I'd like to just voice them out. The first one would be, what profiles of rising adults with disabilities will the proposed housing project be built to accommodate? Another question that I have is, how will the project ensure a diverse range of needs are met within our community? And the last question is, if the current plans do not address these concerns, how does the town intend to provide for my son and a few others like him in the future? Thank you very much.
Can I address those? Great, thank you. Thank you, Natalie, for your questions. I certainly understand the needs of your family, and I'm sure it's very, very challenging. I hear this a lot, that As people turn 22, they need services, and there are just not a lot of services out there. Our primary funding source is the Department of Developmental Disabilities, DDS in Massachusetts. They will be funding the supports and services that we provide to this group. They have told me that I cannot do 24/7 care on this facility because that would violate the CMS final rule that creates campuses where people are presumed to be on a campus in an institutional nature, meaning they said I can't put any group homes on this property, no 24/7 care. We have 33 group homes, 13 of which are in Needham, that provide 24/7 care. And we are starting 3 more group homes within the next year for people needing that level of care. But the Department of Developmental Services funded. So this property, with that understanding that we could not provide 24/7 care or any group homes on this property, this is why we went in this direction, that we can provide up to 30 hours of flexible staff support to meet their needs.
All right, great, thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, our next project, Needham Housing Authority. Do you want to introduce the people there, Adam?
So with us tonight is Reg Foster from the Needham Housing Authority. The Needham Housing Authority has made a request for a little over $3.5 million from the CPC for the preservation of seabeds, which we'll see a presentation on momentarily. Reg will walk us through the existing conditions, the scope of improvement, and the intended outcome and the population that they'll serve. So turn it over to Reg.
You want to pass the clicker now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's see, that works. Okay. Yes. Great. I'm Reg Foster. I'm chair of the Needham Housing Authority. I'm also a CPC member as well. Like Dave, the Needham Housing Authority nominates a member of the CPC, as does the Conservation Commission and the Planning Department. And I'm that person for another year or so here. And I'm just going to put myself a timer here. It timed itself out. Oh, well. So well.
We'll keep that.
For those of you that don't know the Needham Housing Authority, we were established by town meeting in 1948. We have 336 physical bricks and mortar units in the town of Needham. That's nearly 50% of the actually affordable housing in Needham. And if you add in our 123 Section 8 vouchers, they're mobile vouchers, then 60% or so. In 2021, we launched the Preservation and Redevelopment Initiative. It's going to take us 10 to 15 years, and the overall goal is to rehab or redevelop all 336 units that we have. In 2021, we hired the Cambridge Housing Authority as our development consultant, who has successfully done this work for the last 20 years or so, 2,000 or 3,000 units, almost $1 billion of new capital that they brought into the town of Cambridge, and we're benefiting from their advice. Next slide. Now, the CPA, we are applying for now $3.5 million of funding. We had originally applied for $5.6 million of funding, and the So there just isn't enough money to go around for affordable housing, including the other worthy project we just heard about right now. So the board voluntarily reduced it from 5.6 million to 3.5 million. And that covers those portions of full gut renovation of the Seabeds Way property that are eligible for CPA funding. It meets the requirements and standards of the Needham CPA plan, urgent community need for senior affordable housing. It's had strong support for the last few years, and not only this, but our other Linden Terrace redevelopment project, which is also more senior housing and rehabbing senior housing. And the 2022-23, I don't know quite what date to call it, but the most recent Needham housing plan that was afforded, worked on for a couple of years by the planning board and the select board. This is the #1 priority for development, is more affordable housing in Needham. Next slide. For those of you who don't know where Seabeds Way is, it's on a 10 or 11 acre site in the northern tip of town. If you go up Central Avenue, just before you reach 128, we're kind of on the left off of St. Mary's Street. There's that big TV tower that we have in town that's sort of looming over our property. There are 76 units there. It's very nice. 46 of them are senior housing units. The next one. And 30 of them are family units. So we're just doing a total gut renovation rehab of both Seabeds and Captain Robert Cook. We had hoped there would be enough money to do both, but there isn't. So we're just going forward in a phased approach with Seabeds Way. It was built in 1982, which makes it almost 45 years old, and it's 4 buildings, 2-story walk-ups, and it is very long in the tooth at this point in time. Like if you have a 45-year-old kitchen in your own house, you really know that it's probably time for an update. So we have existing conditions that have been assessed by consultants with interior elements all worn out, exterior elements all worn out. The safety does not meet sort of modern 21st century standards, building safety systems and electrical systems, and it is most considerably not climate friendly at this point in time now, by the standards that we all now have about climate resilience. We also don't normally put this down on slides, but over the years we've discovered a number of construction deficiencies and shortcuts that were taken that we are going to be correcting. And the overall rating of this property by our assessors is fair. We hope to bring that up to excellent. And we are doing that not only with the Cambridge Housing Authority leading the way and finding us the money to do it, but also the design team of Bargman, Hendry, and Architect, BH&A. Extensive experience in this sort of thing. Extensive experience in Needham that really has paid off. They not only are doing this project and our Linden Street project, but they've done 3 or 4 other projects for the town recently and produced very excellent results for Needham. The overall goals, as I said, is to fix everything so that it'll last another 40, 50, 60 plus years here. Now, I'm not going to get into the details, but the Community Preservation Act, as it's been interpreted by the Executive Office of Housing and Community Development and the Department of Revenue, only covers certain of the repairs that we need to do. About $20 million in construction costs, our total project costs overall, but it only covers what the definition of preservation, which is roofs and exterior sheathing, siding, windows, doors, anything that has to do with the outside, and anything that has to do with building safety for the residents. So upgraded fire alarm systems, etc. Everything that's sort of in red that you can read in green that you can read for yourself at the top with an asterisk. And we're also going to be putting in new energy efficient building systems, electric heat pumps. We're discontinuing all fossil fuel on the site. We're adding an emergency generator. Have discovered, we've always known that we have excellent solar roofs in that site with it pointing in the right direction. And so we'll be putting in upgrades so that we can put solar panels all over the roof and provide electricity to our residents and help them that way. And next. And of course, we're doing the kitchens and the bathrooms and new carpeting and new ceiling and more acoustical tiles and just taking care of a lot of things that need to be done here. Our Cambridge Housing Authority consultants have come up with a strategy that produces, except for the CPA $3.5 million, we're requesting about 17 more $1 million from non-Needham taxpayer funding. That is going from our current subsidy program that's called Section 9 of the Housing Act to Section 8. Won't again get into details, although we provided enormous details to the CPC, and it's been evaluated by our consultant, Emily Aptenberg. The other thing that we have figured out how to do is to have Needham Housing Authority, which doesn't have a lot of money, but contribute about $2 million to the overall financing of the Seabeds Way project, because we earn a developer fee from the Linden Street project, and that's about $1.1 million. And that we also have set aside our capital funds from the HUD that we have in the bank account and are using that to finance up to about $2 million of the overall $20 million total project cost here. However, without the CPA funding, we would still have a $3.5 million gap. And there really isn't anywhere else to go. If you go to the next page, next slide. Again, I won't go into detail on all the different funding sources. The one in the middle, I wish I had kind of yellow highlighted it there, but where it says CPA fiscal 26 funding 3.5 million, that's the request today. All those other funding sources have either been applied for or will be applied for. But one thing to note is we are not going after the same funding source as Charles River Center is going, tax credits, and we're not going after the same funding source, again, tax credits, that we are applying for at the Linden Street project, which is about a $57 million ask. And that application was submitted a couple of weeks ago, because we would just be competing with ourselves. It's hard enough to get one project funded in any given funding cycle, let alone two. So we are actually taking out a big mortgage, almost $10 million at the top, or a little over $10 million, and going for a number of other smaller funding sources, which applications have either been submitted or about to be submitted here. On the right-hand side is the uses of the funds, again, the majority of which, $14 million, is direct bricks and mortar construction, and the rest of it's all the soft costs that go along with doing any kind of project like this. We would be remiss not to say there are risks ahead and some caveats that we've been bringing to the attention of the CPC and tonight to the audience here. Some of the risks are the growth in construction costs. We know what's going on with tariffs these days, those of us who are just shaking our heads a little bit. So we built in a 4.5% escalator for construction costs into the budget you're looking for, and we added another 6% to sort of address the uncertainty ahead, but also doing a smaller project with Seabeds is going to be less efficient than doing both Seabeds and Captain Robert Cook together, which was the original idea back last November. We got some excellent feedback by the CPC's consultant, Emily Achtenberg, who pointed out some weaknesses or leanness in our operating budget and made some recommendations. And so we built those into the final submission, an amendment that was just submitted a week or two ago. There was changes to the property management fee where we moved some of it below the line and a majority of it below the line, 3/5, and only 2% above the line. Again, this is all inside baseball thing. I'm not going to try to explain it tonight. I also would want to point out, it's relevant, the town makes a contribution to affordable housing projects and has since the Needham Housing Authority was formed in 1948, which is they waive property taxes and either land or personal property taxes, and they have just agreed to do that at the Linden Street property and have done it there for 60 years before that, and we are expecting that to be the same thing for this project. Also, building permit fees is another standard town policy for entities like the Needham Housing Authority. Another risk is interest rates. Anybody here who can tell me whether they're going up or down? Probably should go make some investments in the stock market. But we've, it's at 6.34%, and if it goes up significantly, that's hard. It lowers the amount of money we can raise. But if it goes down, then we'll have a little more flexibility in the budget. The other here rebates, those are energy reduction rebates from the 2022 Infrastructure Act. That money has been received by the state of Massachusetts for distribution, so it probably is there this year, but there is some financing risk or a funding risk that we may be facing if we can't go forward with this project right away from the attempts at clawing back funding and terminating programs and slowing down programs that's going on in Washington as we speak. And that leads to last one, project timeline. If the CPC should be able to recommend the funding we've asked for next Wednesday, and if town meeting will vote to approve it, then we anticipate that we'll have 90% of the construction documents done by the end of the summer and be able to do construction bidding in the fall, which is when we will actually really know how much this thing is going to be cost, because we'll have all the construction bids in, and start early construction a year from now. Amazingly, that we'd be able to do that. And that's the end of the presentation.
Thanks, Reggie. Any comment or question from?
I'm using a loud voice, but all right. The question for clarification is 76 units were mentioned, but then it was said that 46 of those units are senior and 30 are family. Then it was said that Cook's Drive is not part of this project. So it's not 76 units. Is that correct? It's 46 units?
Is that?
Yes, that's the question.
Yes, yeah, so it's the 40 senior units. We originally applied for all 76, but there isn't enough CPA funding to fund that.
So is it 46 senior units? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Oscar?
Oscar Mertz, Library Hillway, Precinct I. I just want to sort of speak broadly at first. I think one of the things that's remarkable about what is unfolding in this town is the coordination of all of these different, very significant interests in housing for these populations. I do remember that there was interesting debate about having NHA and CRC both going after Militia Heights property, and that there was a very gracious deference by the NHA to say, we don't need to compete with ourselves, and there's this sense of coordinated service, and I commend that to the NHA for that, and also for CRC. The work that they just proposed on, I think, is a remarkable project. I think for that to be a model for town and for the nation is incredibly important. Everything that was said, I agree with that it's an underserved community, as is the NHA. So I'm here to say that I think it's important that we also acknowledge that the NHA has been and TCHOC have been working very hard to figure out ways to accommodate both of these deserving communities, adjusting your budgets, adjusting to phasing, which I know it takes on additional risk and cost. But I know it's something that is important to acknowledge the CRC's needs and to figure out a way to do both. So I hope that the town sees the need for both of these communities and can find a way to put all that money together, because it's incredibly important. And thank you for all the work that's being done for these two communities.
Great, thanks. Any other commenters? We have somebody online. Yeah.
Kind of no drill, but this is different. So I received a call. My name is Holly Clark. I live on Central Avenue. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct D. I received a call today that Kalpana wanted to speak to you all today, and she has some difficulties and wasn't sure the Zoom thing would work for her. So that's why I stood up. I see her name is here though, so maybe she's good. So if she's good, I'll be quiet. Okay, but if not, I took notes.
Kalpana, you're unmuted. Can you?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kalpana Shah. I'm a Needham Housing tenant residing at 168 Linden Street, apartment number B. I'm deeply request not to go for this request. My major one point is that the recently 1.5 month, whatever is happening at the Washington, in this uncertainty to lock this kind of money is not wise. And also that leads to the town other projects not be able to address or not getting the money. And mainly also, according to Mr. Hank, the flashing red light is Stephen and Palmer, which the lease is going to close. And if the landlord leaves without relocating the present residents, then the town will have a major crisis of the money to reset whole thing. Secondly, I would say that just at 4 o'clock news, governor said that we are not receiving any grant or funding from the federal or state. And in that uncertainty, many of the good services like special need children would not get any help, as well as Meal on Wheels or other activities for the high school students, that they are not receiving the funding for playground or other help, which leads them to deep depression or the major crisis right now at the high school. And I can say this because I'm last 15 years community volunteer, as well as I am an election worker of the town of Needham. And these kids are having a major depression, and in that they are having like a major opioid use, and the gun violence is increasing in the high school. And over to Miss Moore, because I don't want to take more time of the board. But over to Miss Clerk. She will give more explanation.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I actually think Kalpana expressed herself well. I will clarify a little bit when she was speaking to me. I very much appreciated your acknowledgement about the uncertainty of federal money and state money. And I think for every project, that's just a reality that we didn't have last year. It just wasn't there. And so I think that's an extra consideration for all of the projects, as a whole, not even particularly on this one, but all of them, as you figure out how to divvy up the funds. And we know that this fund is actually limited, that we can't cover even everything that's been requested. So good luck. And secondly, on this, I think a comment Kalpana was making was that because of this change, there are other programs that maybe weren't thinking they would need funding 6 months ago, but may find out because they got cut out of HUD, out of Medicaid, out of community services, that they may be appropriate applicants and might come forward. So I think part of what she's asking is just as you divvy it up and figure how much do you want to go forward and use next year's reserves now, to think about that maybe we're at a time that it makes even more sense to reserve some. Again, I very much appreciated the acknowledgement of this particular reality. So, and her comment was also about, she was talking about the senior center in particular might be a place that would want to come forward and get more. And that is truly completely a town service and really an appropriate applicant for what is really tax money to be used there. So, thank you.
I'm Paula Dickerman, Burnside Road in Needham. I'd actually like to address what Kalpana said in that, yeah, there's risk. I don't think that's a reason to throw this out. Risk doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It means it might not happen. And for us to roll over doesn't seem like a good idea to me if this is a project that we want to do. Also, I just want to speak in favor of the project. We are very fortunate to have good, affordable housing in our town. We hope to add to that. We have, through the leadership of the NHA, an incredible 10-year plan to increase the number of units that we offer, which is such an amazing thing to be doing. But in the meantime, we have people living in these units, and they deserve them to be up to code. They deserve them to be safe. Maybe they don't need the most expensive paint, maybe there's that. But basic things have not been done for many years just because the way this stuff is funded. It's not well funded. This is not a for-profit thing. It's a shoestring kind of thing. And I think the NHA has done an excellent job of planning and taking a secondary seat when they saw that need in the community. And I really hope that we can support them going forward.
Any other comments?
Jan Soma, 106 Mark Tree Road, Precinct D. I'll be brief. I support both of these projects, and I know that a lot of money is being asked for this particular cycle, but community housing hasn't been allotted a lot of money over the years. Since 2006, I think, is when things got started. These projects are so well planned and designed, and they're happening now. This is an opportunity to make them real now. And it hasn't come along very often. So this is, in my mind, a very important opportunity. I also think, and this is kind of a question, that this money is not going to be wasted. If the other money doesn't come through, this money is not going to be used. It's not going to be thrown away. It'll be stored somewhere for allocation to another project, right? So, so if that's a fear of folks, I don't think that it's a real fear. I know that it's a lot of money all at once, but you know, that 2022 Town of Needham Housing Plan says we need this, and this is exactly the population that they've identified as needing the housing the most. So, so I'm totally in favor, and it's my tax money. I'd like to see it go there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I make a clarifying comment, make sure I was misunderstood
Sure.
in my
Go ahead.
presentation? So, yes, absolutely, we're trying to acknowledge the risk that's out there. You know, we have to go into this with our eyes open, but I'm not going to ask to put it up here, but if you go back to the funding slide, which is page 9, people can look at it later. The HERE program was the only one that we identified that might be conceivably at risk. HEAR, by the way, stands for the Home Electrification and Appliance Rebate Program, again from the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. So we went and looked at it when all this disruption started, you know, a few weeks ago, and our state, has already received their full allocation to hand out this year. It's in our bank accounts in the state, and so the point I was trying to make is, and maybe I wasn't very articulate, is that it's here this year. It might not be here next year because there has to be a 2026 allocation. And the other point I was trying to make is to say, if you look at it, it's $644,000 that we're expecting to get from the HERE program. It's not a huge part of our funding. So that's about, what, 6%? I'm doing this off the top of my head. That might be at risk next year, which is still a big hole, and we may be here next year saying we have that big hole if we're not funded this year, but this year I think we're okay, and I hope I'm not proven wrong.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments in public?
Hello, my name is Ross Donald, 25H Chambers Street, and I'm vitally interested in what's happening here. And some of the first concern is tenant participation. The tenants do have something to say, and they're going to be involved, whether it's a relocation program or how about a buyout? Just give me some money, I'll go away. And there are new rules and regulations being developed on that score, and I think that's a useful resource. There are people that are living at Linden Chambers that can be significantly involved in the project to the better of it. Some of the concerns are the phased aspect of the construction. You're kind of surprised at Linden Street that they were talking about a 1A and 1B kind of.
Excuse me, Ron, we're talking about CBED's project.
Okay, I'm using this as an illustration. The residents are concerned about phased construction, so I have to bring it up. And the interconnectedness of the project sort of illustrates a similar kind of thing. It's phased 1A, 1B at Linden Street, and it's sort of like you start one part of it and you don't, when do you finish it? The same thing may be true, and although I haven't followed the CBED's Captain Cook things, I don't live over there, but they do seem to be connected particularly with the fair cloth opportunities and so forth. But the concern for the residents is you start a project and you don't have a clear idea of how it's going to be finished. I'm not against the project. I think that things should go forward, but with the right input and and the clear goals and objectives, if one is 3.5 years that starts in a couple of years, but then you got another 1.5 years to finish up the whole thing, it's sort of like uncertain. Kalpana talked about the stress and the strain. I've been hearing about the tear down of Linden Chambers for 12 years, and it's just never ending. It's like an aspiration that persists when what we need to do is maintain and modernize the property. At least that's an option that we can consider. Okay. I did have a question. This is probably just an accounting technicality, but I was drawn to tenant services, because often it does appear to be kind of singled out, and I guess that's in order to make sure that tenant services are not left behind. You do a development, and there's no money in the operation or management to deal with tenant services, and it has happened that the commissioners have asked the executive directors 0 line item for tenant services month after month. So I'm getting the idea that it wants to be a little bit more built in, and I think somebody like Ben Stone, who's been following these things for 20 years, that might be the rationale for that. But what does it mean when you're talking about things above the line and below the line? It says below the line payable from cash flow. Is that a distinction?
Yeah.
It might be just an accounting technicality, excuse
I'll
me.
take the questions in reverse order, I guess. In the interest of time, I would recommend that you watch the video of the last CPC meeting where it was explained for an hour and a half or two more than I can do tonight.
All right.
But the point for tonight is that the CPC consultant identified that we had not provided for enough tenant services in the budget that we presented 2 or 3 weeks ago, and recommended that maybe we reconsider that, and we did. So we put more tenant services in. Below the line, above the line is not something I want to get into tonight. This second is the phase construction is a reality. There's not enough money to do everything at the same time. I wish we could. It would be cheaper to do, but we can't. And the third thing is tenant participation has been extensive on that project, multiple tenant meetings, most recently in the last 2 weeks, to make sure that they knew that we were going to be here tonight. And I would say generally the tenants are extremely supportive of us going forward with this phased approach with Seabeds first and Cook second. Summing up a 1 hour plus or minus meeting in one phrase.
All right, thanks, sir. Thanks, sir.
Yeah, one other comment. I just want to thank you for explaining the HEAR rebates. I think that could be significant, particularly if we, develop the any project with ideas of sustainability, zero energy, and that sort of thing. But that has to be built in from the beginning. Can't tack it on a few solar panels at the end of the project. I don't think is really suitable, but thank you.
I'll give you this, so you can look it up some more for the ties to the Linden Street project, which I know you're very interested in.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Any other comments?
Jean McKnight, from something you said, request for clarification. When you presented the timeline for the Seabeds project, you didn't say anything about phasing, and yet in response to the question here, you said it would be a phased project. Could you explain that?
So our original application of funding for $5.6 million in November was to do both Seabeds and Cook both together. There isn't that much CPA funding there to do that, and also to support the CRC project, which the Needham Housing Authority supports as well. for the reasons that Oscar mentioned. It's an incredible thing they're doing there. We both do the same sort of thing, just for different populations. I didn't mention it because this is just on this application, but I did say at the last CPC meeting where we announced the board's decision to do a phase project, that you could expect to see us back next fall, should we be successful going forward with seabeds the way with the Captain Robert Cook proposal, so that we can then go through the process and finish seabeds and then roll right into doing Captain Robert Cook.
Okay, now I understand. When you speak of a phased project, Seabeds is phase one.
Yes.
And if there's funds and you go forward, then Cook's is phase two. But Seabeds itself is not phased.
No.
In the sense that you're doing these
It's
units,
phased
then
in a
these, then
different
these.
way, which is we don't do all 4 buildings and 46 apartments at the same time. We'll be doing one building at a time or something like that, but that's not relevant to tonight.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, anybody else? No? All right, thank you, Needham Housing Authority, Reg. And we will move on to the next project, which is the Action Park and pickleball courts. And I don't know, Paul, or you want to introduce that?
So the next project that we have is $300,000 on the design of 8 pickleball courts and an action park, which is a bike skateboard amenity that the Department of Recreation is looking to design for Claxton Park. And with us tonight is Stacy Mulroy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Stacy Moore, I'm the Director of Park and Recreation. And we'll talk about the Action Sports Park, which is indeed a skate park, but open to other wheeled vehicles, not cars. And potentially looking at a pump track, which I am not well versed, and I know there are people in the audience that are more well versed than I am. But it is a bike track that is more horizontal and less vertical. And then as far as the pickleball courts, we're actually in the design phase trying to figure out how many courts we can fit in the Claxton area so that we are not encroaching on the conservation land around us. So back in 22, the Active Recreation Assets Working Group, which is quite a long name for a group, looked at various spaces around town, created a feasibility study to then go out and find the best location for skate park or action sports park, because it's more than skateboards, and the pickleball courts. And so we had a feasibility study that was done with our consultant CHA. And at the end of a long year of looking at different pros and cons of 4 different areas, Claxton was the slam dunk, so to speak. So, yeah. So, if you're a Central Ave, so at the top of your screen right here would be the RTS. These are the 2 softball fields that are currently under construction. So this is a separate project. Over here, there used to be a playground that was removed. And that's where we're looking to put the pickleball courts, on this edge. And then over here is the quarry. Some of you may have purchased your Christmas trees there. But we're looking to actually design a skate park in and around the quarry, with the pump track being sort of on the upper end between Horsford Pond and the quarry area. So we're looking at these 2 areas here and here. And then sort of the accoutrements that would go through this. So obviously looking at extra parking to accommodate some of these new facilities, and being aware of the wetlands, permitting, conservation land around us, and we will be, part of the design would be a sound study for the pickleball courts. So like I said before, stage one was back in 22 with the creation of the group. That then led to the feasibility study with CHA. CHA concluded their study this past September, naming Claxton as the best location out of 4 different locations. November of this past year, we applied for CBC, and if approved in May for the design funds, we could go out to bid for the pickleball and action sports park. And then ideally, we would award design to an engineering firm this summer. And yes, we would be back. Ideally, if everything falls into place, fall of 25, that is a very quick turnaround for design of this facility. So it could be the following year. But yes, we would be looking to come back for CPC funds for construction. Like I said, $35,000 was funded for the feasibility study. We are requesting $300,000 for the design of both the skate park spaces and the pickleball. And then the estimated cost from CHA for construction in FY27 would be $3 million for both projects combined. And now, if anybody has any questions or comments.
All right, thank you, Stacy. Anybody here in audience?
Hey there. I'm Josh Conlon, 22 Oakhurst. I've been annoying Stacy for a couple of years, as well as Chris and Cindy over there. I appreciate Park and Rec's willingness and efforts to help try to get this thing done. Really, really appreciate the ask of CPC for this. I really feel this does fall into CPC's mission, of creating new outdoor space and recreational items around this town. I think it's desperately needed. As we all know, and I'm sure everybody in here knows well, there's a ton of really awesome playgrounds in this town. Some of them just through age need love. But there's a ton of awesome spaces. It's one of the reasons my wife and I moved here and had kids here, for young children. The high school sports teams are awesome. There's a big gap there though. And like my kids, my son, he absolutely loves soccer, absolutely loves baseball. He also knows he's not going to be good enough to make the varsity teams in this town, which pretty much ends his town-sponsored athletic career in 8th grade. There's a lot more that kids can do. Everyone in this room has probably seen it. I've seen it. I have a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old in this town. The amount of inside time, games on phones, social media stuff. I desperately seek to get away from that. I spent a huge majority of my life in skate parks when I was young. I was a professional half-pipe skater for years. The amount of community that is developed around these skate parks is like something you've never seen unless you've been there. Black kids, Asian kids, white kids, poor kids, rich kids, disabled kids. The amount of kids and adults in skate parks communing with each other, helping each other, supporting each other. It's really, really, truly awesome. I'd love to see this town move towards the next phase of recreation and not just the traditional 4 sports. Stacy and Park and Rec have done an awesome job of that, promoting this project. It's been impressive. I was surprised by the time anything takes in town politics, but it's impressive, and I really do hope that CPC supports this project. The teenagers in this town need more. This is a huge, huge step to making that. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Pascarosa, Edgewood Street in Needham. Grew up in Newton. Sorry about that. I've reviewed the plans. Very exciting prospect for Needham pickleball. I've been involved in the development, as Stacy and Chris know, much to their chagrin, that I've been pushing the agenda for a home for us, and we're excited about Claxton. Very excited about Claxton, but The concern that I have, and is shared by several, the chart that we produced here stops in 2020, showing something like 4.5 million players of pickleball in the United States right now. That number's ballooned to almost 14 million. And our concern is we have 8 courts that are pretty well maxed at prime time right now. And we're talking about 8, I believe, at Claxton. Yes, Stacy?
We don't know how many.
Yeah. Yeah. So my follow-up question to that, if it's going to be 8, and that's certainly what I would consider to be the minimum, what happens to Mills? Is that a discussion appropriate right now? No. Okay. So I'm just here to advocate for Claxton, and hopefully we can get that done. Thank you very much for your time. Am I missing anything? No. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm a resident at 211 Highgate Street. I'm Erica Hessian. I've been in Needham for 22 years. I'm a teacher here, and I'm very connected in the community. I will say that as of 2 years ago, when I started playing pickleball, thanks to Paul and his free lessons, it is the first time that I have seen a group of people of all ages, doesn't matter what ethnicity, same sort of levels the playing field, no pun intended. But it has brought so many people together, and it is a sport that is surpassed any other sport as far as how much it has grown. We can do more in Needham to make a space accessible to people, and it's really important that we're not sharing space with the Needham tennis team, with the people that also enjoy tennis. It's not fair to kick them out. We need a designated space. And what I'm afraid of is 8 courts right now, like Paul said. We max out, and we're taking over a tennis space, which isn't fair to them. So we need more, and we really need to prioritize this because there's a number of people in the community that play this, and it's brought people together. And I think that's really important. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, one, we go online. Oh, I'm sorry. Come on, yeah, come on.
I am still Holly Clark, and I still live on Central Avenue, in Needham, which is right down the road. I think the planning is great. So I want to be clear, like the idea of, I remember kids trying to get a skate park, not quite as long as we've been trying to get Pollard done, but for a really long time. So I think that's fine. I want to be sure that the planning includes the infrastructure planning, because for those who understand what's kind of happening on Central Avenue, there is a lot of development coming in. And it is a 2-lane road. It is 24 feet wide. There is no parking on the side of the road. And please make sure there is no parking on the side of the road. It is, and traffic, sometimes people think, oh, it's convenience and you're complaining and whatever. It's safety. It is safety. There is not sidewalks on both sides of the road. There's not a clean sidewalk from Mark Tree up to Claxton. So I don't know what needs to happen. Okay, I know the town has a really good traffic engineer, and we could ask him, what do we need to do? Do we need to do something at the corner of Mark Tree and Central? Do we need, I don't want to say stoplight because everybody screams, but like that is a serious part of making projects work and making neighbors feel like they were considered too. Neighbors that maybe do want their kids to go play at the skate park or are willing to play pickleball, but want to be able to know that their kids are safe when they're walking down the street. So if it takes more money to make sure that planning happens, I think you should ask for it. That's what I'm saying. And I also think that as you prioritize, and this is kind of goes back to the bird's eye view of all this, as you think, if there's not enough money to do everything, this is a town department. So that you don't have any place else to go but to the town to make sure this happens. So I hope the committee will keep that in mind as you sort through what's happening, is what are the sources of funding? And I would say the town departments are really ripe for this. I think NHA, again, is limited to where they can go. And I think other entities, as valid and wonderful as the plans might be, may also have other sources of funding that they can go to. And those are all really legitimate concerns and questions for the committee to think about. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we have somebody online.
Hi there. I'm very sorry that I'm not there in person this evening, but I'm here with my son Caleb. My name is Brad Molyneux, live at 47 Mayo in Needham, and just delighted to see this come along as far as it has. Just really, echo everything that Josh said about just the real need for us to have more options for recreation for our kids. And as the parent of a 12-year-old who is an avid, BMX bike rider and scooter rider. And I've been up and down probably every skate park and pump track on the East Coast with my son Caleb. It's just always remarkable to see in a skate park and a pump track just how many kids and adults are coming together, playing together. And it's really not just skateboards, as Josh alluded to, but oftentimes we'll see, BMX bikes, mountain bikes, adults on mountain bikes, little kids on balance bikes, all sharing the space. And it's really just a remarkable, way for folks to come together, and I think would really be a great asset to Needham. And I'm here with Caleb, who wanted to say a word as well.
Yeah, I also thought that there's like not just bikes and skateboards, there's also scooters and like rollerblades that you could also use. And when I go to skate parks, I don't just meet kids my age, I can also become friends with kids other ages, and they can teach me their tricks and I can teach them my tricks, and that's really fun.
So thanks so much, and very excited for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right. Other comment?
Still Paula Dickerman on Burnside Road. I understand that there are requests for more money than you have, and I do not envy you in your job of having to decide. And what I'd like to say is that for me, I think I would look at what happens if you don't fund certain things. So if we don't have pickleball courts and improvements to Claxton, I hear that people will suffer. I mean, what happens if we can't put new shelves in the History Center? What happens if there's no signage on the trails or inadequate signage? Versus, in my opinion, what happens if we don't do the improvements to seabeds that are crying for help, and we have a plan to do? What happens if we continue to not serve the Charles River?
Are you speaking of the pickleball courts?
I guess
That's what
only a little bit. So
Yeah,
I
so
apologize, and I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? No? Yeah. All right. Anybody else online?
No.
All right. So thank you, Stacy. Let's move on to our last project. Is Marshall or Paul, do you want to introduce this? Or?
So the next project, also the proponent of which is the Needham Parks and Rec Department, represented by Stacy and Pitt Olson, is for design funding of $69,960 to redesign the Elliott School playfields.
Edward Olson, Superintendent of Parks and Forestry and the town's tree warden. Thank you so much for having me tonight, or having us tonight. The purpose will be to introduce our design funding request for, as was mentioned, the Elliott School playing field and playground renovation. And we've got a short PowerPoint, I promise, very short, and then I'll try to answer any questions that might be. Next slide, please. So as was mentioned, we're talking about the Elliott Elementary School. This is, as we heard, located right off of Central Ave as you come in from Newton. It's our first elementary school. And it's a great school. It's a beautiful school inside. And as we heard, our focus is Pollard Middle School right now. So the school is going to be there in fine shape for a long time. But outside, we need we're looking to design some improvements. The playing field is undersized and showing signs of wear and tear because, again, it's a very large school population, and as well, the playground, basketball courts, and hardscape are also showing signs of wear and tear. And that's where we're talking. Next slide, please. Thank you, Lauren. So just some facts. Elliott is an 8-acre total plot size, built 56, rebuilt in 2003. Like I said, inside it's a very beautiful school in great shape. Big school population, 450 students, 81 staff. In addition to being a school, the outside space is shared by many of our user groups. Needham baseball, softball, permits the field, spring and fall. Park and Rec has historically had a summer camp there. NEDP, after the school day at all our elementary schools, NEDP, Needham Extended Day Program, takes over the space and until the permit holders come in at night. And then obviously it's a big location for neighborhood families. It's in a great kind of nestled in a beautiful neighborhood, and oftentimes on the weekends you'll find many families hanging out there. History, John Elliott. I'll go quickly here. You can see the slide. I'll go to the second part of that. How old is the current school playground field? Deed was, thank you for the fly-ins. I forgot I had those fly-ins. There's the deed. The deed was 1954. And 2003, like I said, the school and playground and backstop and playing field and playground were completed. I don't think there's any more flyings on that one. Oh, there is one. Oh, wow. Wow, I don't even know my own, it's been a while. So again, I think that's a telling slide right there because we're talking 26 years ago. And as you can see, no playground. Ooh. Sorry, no playground, but essentially it's still the same rudimentary baseball field we have now in the beautiful stone outcropping, which the kids love to mine off of. Okay, next slide, and I guess. And again, like I mentioned, it's a beautiful school, but the space outside is showing signs of need for improvement. Thank you. So what are we looking for? We're looking to request design funds to address some of the outdoor recreation solutions. Elliott has been in the DPW Park and Rec 5-year athletic facilities capital plan for well over 5 years. I think it's been in there for almost 7 to 9 years as an out-year program. And I'm proud to say we're finally getting to Elliott, which is pretty remarkable. When I go to the CPC website on the town webpage and see the amount of projects we've done as a town, it's pretty amazing. But here we are. It's been in the capital plan for long. And if approved, like Stacy said with the skate park, we'd enter into a design and engineering contract. And much like Stacy said about the action park, we facilitate a working group and quickly get to work, have some neighborhood meetings, user group reach outs. We've already been kind of lockstep with the school principal and the school superintendent. And again, we try to convene this group quickly because what we'd like to do is get that feedback quickly so we can really dive into the design and be ready with a construction estimate at this time next year. So there's a lot of work to be done. You know, this kind of just highlights what we're talking about, the playing field. And it's not always this bad, but I think what we see with a lot of the school populations are the kids want to be outside all the time. So it's tough to grow grass in the Northeast when kids are out balling a field. I remember back when I was a kid when I went to a concert at Great Woods called Lollapalooza. And it's almost like a Lollapalooza every day at an elementary school ground. That's just my analogy. So it's tough even as a good turf grass manager to grow a swatted turf that can withstand 450 students on a daily basis, extended day program, permit holders. So it needs some help, needs to design some solutions, what we're looking for. Playground likewise. I think the biggest thing for Stacy and I is the surfacing at the playground. It's engineered wood fibers. At one time, that was an acceptable choice, but now we found that it is not an accessible surface. And Stacy could talk to that more, but we'll be looking to remove that and bring in a poured play surface, kind of like we did at Greensfield a couple of years ago. And then last to the basketball court is in serious work of in need of an overlay and some new hoops and some new paint. And then lastly, right about here, there is some underground drainage that we'll need to fix if we're approved for this construction project. Much like we did with McLeod, one of the big drivers with our McLeod project was the 4-foot drain pipe that was underneath that field that needed to be fixed. Similarly, there's a drainage pipe underneath this field that needs to be fixed, so that would be included in this field design. And then lastly, pathways. I think in all the projects we've worked on the past 10, 12 years, we always try to make accessible loop pathways so that we can incorporate paths of recreation. So we'd look to do that as well. In connectivity, I think last of the Sudbury Path, the aqueduct, if people don't know, is really right out here. You can connect to the aqueduct, and that can bring you all the way down to Hemlock Gorge and beyond into Wellesley. So it does have a lot of connectivity, and we'd like to kind of keep on that theme of connectivity of passive recreation spots into active trails. So why? Safety. Obviously, that's one of the paramount reasons why we look at any field or playground renovation. Accessibility, as we spoke about. Equity. People said, well, what do you mean by equity? But we've done a lot of their school grounds, and I think the Elliott's been kind of waiting for their turn for outside space. It's one of the smallest outside spaces of any elementary school in town. Newman has multiple fields, an outdoor trail system. Broad Meadow has upper and lower fields. Mitchell has a big area playground and basketball courts. And I think Elliott is one of the sites that's kind of undersized and needs some improvements. When I say equity, I'm thinking that they've waited for their chance, and it's time to provide that. And as well, as we've heard, there's a population right up the road that deserves more. So I don't like to use the word lower income area, but I think we've all acknowledged the heights, and that side of town is probably the least income households of the community. Sustainability loss is one of our themes always. We talked about the wood fiber being removed to be replaced with a more sustainable surfacing. In addition, as it says, that fiber washes a lot. It's a pretty flat site, but when we get heavy stormwater events, that fiber washes literally into the playing field, and we have to actually go and put it in a loader bucket and put it back into the playground. So I won't miss the fiber at the Elliott if we go there. Next slide, please. So when we kind of briefly spoke about that, but if we were graciously approved this design allocation funding at town meeting and by everybody, we'd get to work quickly. As soon as those funds were available next fiscal year, we converge, make a working group. We already have people kind of lined up for that. Fast track the design process and be ready to have a construction estimate for submittal to the town manager's budget. And from there, again, we usually wait to hear from what our guidance is, and oftentimes we've been very lucky to come to CPC for these projects. So I can't say if that'll be the case with this, but we'll see. And if that all goes well, we'd be looking to construct this project the summer of '26, a year from this summer. Thank you. Take any questions.
Thanks, Eddie.
You're welcome.
Any comments?
Excuse me. My name is Matthew Lees. I live on Crane Street, and you can actually, in one of the photos, see the aerial view of my home. Been there 25 years, and the school was redone in 2003 when my boys were very young. And this young man over there, our neighbor Andy, who's out of college now, also was one of the early classes in the new fabulous Elliott School. So this is really exciting to hear about, and I think much needed. The fields really, from many years ago, have needed a bit of work. And as you said, they're used by the school, by Little League, by the neighborhood. And so, very much in support of this. Crane Street is a private road between Central and the field. And it's used by, it's not an official drop-off or pickup from the school, but some people do, and that's fine. It's used by people walking their dogs through, people riding their bikes through to Ardmore and other places. And so it gets a bit of use. It was in a bit of disarray for many years, but because it's a private road, it's up to the abutters to take care of it. So last August, the three homes had it regraded and repaved. So one thing that we hope is part of the planning is, whatever large vehicles that go over it are gentle and careful, because we invested a lot in repaving and making it safe, not only for those of us who live on it, but for the high use that it gets. Yeah, and we're certainly glad to see that there'll be meetings with neighbors, people in the neighborhood, but very excited about the plan.
Thanks. Anybody else? Any other comments? Anybody online?
No.
Okay, well, thank you, Eddie, Stacy, and that's our last project for our public hearing. And so I would like to close the public hearing. We have to vote.
Do you need a motion for that?
I don't know, I'm asking my expert.
Just in case, I move to close the hearing.
All right,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. How about we take a bio break for a few minutes and then we can continue on with our normal business? Is that okay?
Yep.
All right. Say like 5 minutes?
Yeah. You were sitting.
Okay, so
All in tan.
we're back at our regular meeting, and we have a few items to cover, and I realize it's getting late, so, we'll speed through these. So the first item is on High Rock Estates. We finally got something more definitive from the town council on eligibility. Long story short, doesn't feel it's eligible, and I guess Needham Housing Authority doesn't necessarily agree, but they're going to withdraw their application. Is that correct?
I think you rejected it.
Okay.
Actually, we
I-
deferred.
We deferred, yeah, so,
No, but it's fine. I'd rather do that because there's a bunch of people who don't agree with the decision. And so we may use it as something to change the legislation so it's more clarified. Because I will say, just, I'm not sour grapes. I absolutely respect Chris Heap. He's been a hero in other ways that have helped us get to where we are right now, and he's our town council, but I literally wouldn't be here with these two projects today if it wasn't, if we had that interpretation during two previous CPA boards going back to 2012 or so, or something like that.
okay.
So there is ambiguity, and so we just need to think about clarifying that.
All right, but for the moment, can I have a motion to accept the withdrawal of?
No, he's.
I didn't withdraw it.
Oh, you're not?
No, it's a motion to reject the
Oh.
CP. I'd like to have it on minutes so I can take it to our.
All right, my apology.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
No, I just want to make sure we do the right thing.
Just before we do that, I understand your position from the NHA, from only the position of the CPC. what's the significance to us if we either vote to defer it versus vote to
We're not
withdraw?
going to vote to, I
Just
think,
vote to reject it?
yeah, and if they want
On
to,
advice of town council, it's not, I don't see it as anything controversial.
yeah, and if they want to resubmit it in the future, that's fine too.
Mr. Chair, I move to reject the application for the Needham Housing Authority with respect to the High Rock Estates application.
On advice of town council.
On advice of town council.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, one nay. Okay, moving along.
Really? Our positions could be reversed then with Parks and Rec or anything else, you know, absolutely. Or historical.
Okay, moving along, Lauren, Maureen, and myself met with the Finance Committee, and we also met with TCHOC, and, gave brief presentation of, with respect to the Finance Committee, all the projects, and with respect to TCHOC, just the two housing projects. We actually requested a meeting with TCHOC. This was, based on some recommendation or request from Peter Pingatore, who is our, member of TCHOC. And we were hoping to get some feedback from them if they had any. They really didn't have much feedback. There were, with regard to the FinCom, there was a lot of back and forth and, questions asked, but at the end of the day, I don't think there was any, any major question, except for one issue, which was also discussed with one of the select board members after the meetings. He requested to speak with Maureen and I. And this was about somehow based on a slide, I guess, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Reg, a slide that Needham Housing Authority put forward, which indicated that they were, budgeting $4 million out of the $5.5 million that was awarded to them last year for Linden Chambers Phase 1A, and presumably the other $1.5 million would be for Phase 1B. Assuming that was the case, why couldn't the $1.5 million that wasn't going to be used at Linden Phase 1A, why couldn't it be clawed back and used this year, maybe for the CBEDS project? And somebody at the FinCom meeting brought this up, and then, Josh Levy at the select board brought this up. My understanding, and this was confirmed, I think, by Cecilia, that the grant that was made to the, NHA for the Linden Chambers, $5.5 million, didn't really specify or restrict which phase the money was going to be spent at. And I'll let Reg, answer any more detail, but my understanding, based on discussion with Reg, is that this money, this $1.5 million, it could be necessary for the Phase 1A of Linden Chambers. It all depends on how some of these finance issues come out. And so it's, the Needham Housing Authority is, reluctant to say, yeah, we could use that for another project. But more importantly, and what is the mechanism for that to happen? How could you claw that back? Some people felt it could be done, quickly at one town meeting, but
Rescind.
yeah. I don't want to get into that. From what I can tell, that just can't happen, certainly not in this town meeting coming up in May. That, there's not enough time to work out any details on how that would happen.
Well,
And then I think Needham Housing Authority already signed their grant agreement, so they'd have to agree to that anyway, and so that's a.
Yeah, there's actually several reasons, but I think it's worth it
Yeah.
to just go enumerate them, and I can have have somebody put it in writing if that would be helpful, but.
Well, let me just say one thing, and then I'll let you speak, is, I was advised, or we were advised, that, somebody might be asking this question at town meeting, assuming that everything, moves forward here, and that we ought to be prepared to answer that question. So,
I would add to that if that is the case, that it should be someone from the CPC, and probably not you on behalf of both, answer that. If that does come up.
Which is a reason maybe for us to put these 4 reasons in writing, but I'll just do them informally tonight.
I nominate that it's you.
So.
Because you're going to present.
It was a great idea, Adam.
You're going to present this at town meeting.
Reason, in no particular order of importance, reason number 1 is it can't be done quickly. In other words, even if there were a clawback provision in the contract, which there isn't, it's a 2-year contract, but even if there were, you claw it back, it goes into free cash, it has to go through the DOR certification process and come out the other end that we've been learning about, and it's available for next spring. So basically, it wouldn't solve the problem of giving it to Seabeds this year, or anybody, or CRC, or anybody else. It just vanishes for a few months and then comes back. So it's not that it hasn't been thought through, it hasn't been thought about, but it can't be done. It sounds like a great idea. It's kind of like one of the comments we had earlier this evening saying, we have all these social services we have to give to high school kids, so why don't we save the CPA funds for giving them that, it's the second thing is we're likely not to get funded this first round. Everybody knows that. Maybe even the second time we try, maybe the third time we try. It happens to be this round, we were able to round up enough other funding sources so that we only need 4 million, which is not illogical because all the building core is built. All the elevators to support what is just a wing on the other 60 apartments. And we want to save as much as we can for phase 1B, but that's what the numbers turned out. If some of this funding risk that I spoke to coming from what's happening in Washington should cause some of our other federally owned funds to go away by the summer, it may be that we may need to use 5 million. On the other hand, something else might change, and let's say interest rates went down precipitously, because that's huge. We could then afford a much bigger capital loan. The $4 million might go down to 3 million. So we'll only know that when we actually do get that funding. And so 3, if you went to the Needham Housing Authority and said, would you mind voluntarily, letting go of the 2-year contract, we'd say, look, rationally, it really doesn't make sense. It's not that we're trying to be greedy or anything, but we need to have that flexibility.
I have a question on that. If there was a clawback, and it was used and it ended up being used for a High Rock, would that, this year, would that be something that could work, or for the same reason, no?
The High Rock, the town council said it was an ineligible use.
I apologize, not High Rock.
Okay.
I'm exhausted.
Seabeds?
Seabeds.
Yeah.
I
actually
knew
what
you meant.
But no, it would,
So sorry.
it would have the same, that it was the idea that was raised the other day. It was for Seabeds. And that way, we could, instead of doing 3.5 for Seabeds, we could do 2 million for Seabeds, and we'd have enough left over for.
My other question is, where does the 5 million from the CPC fit in Linden, on the Linden Chambers project, in the closing schedule? Would you only close on 4 point something when you close on phase 1A funding?
So, first of all, we got to stop saying Linden Chambers. I know it's only Linden Street, okay? Just wanted to know.
Linden Terrace, right?
Yeah, or, Dave said it as too well, but, just to be clear, we're not doing Chambers at all. To your question, where does it fit in the funding staff? The grant agreement says, and you can get a copy of it, maybe, Dave, you want to circulate it to everybody, but it basically says, we, the town, still want to do our reimbursement model for CPA grants. What does that mean? And you'll understand that this was a bit of a problem on the other side. What it means is we spend the money on construction. Let's say the foundations get laid and there's a progress payment of $1 million that's due upon, inspection, certification of the foundation.
Reg, you're going into a little too much detail here. There's a project, forgive me, there's a project closing, a financing closing, right? When you get the state funding and then you'll, I can't remember, I don't think you'll have CDAC funding, but you'll have other funding that you had applied for. And it would typically be pretty much at the same time, right?
It all would close at the same time.
So, right, is your expectation that you're gonna close on the 5 point whatever from the CPC simultaneously, or are you gonna close on 4 something? And you've got this other 1 point something.
4 something.
So okay, interesting.
And I'm sorry if I misunderstood your question. It is late for me too. But another standard provision of CPA grants, contracts, is they have a 2-year sunset on it. So it only goes 2 years from July 1st, 2025. So June 30th, 2027, it sunset. So let's
Real
say
quick,
we fund.
sorry, can I interrupt for a second? Just, I want to clarify something real quick, Reg. It's not 2 years on July 1st. The grant agreement is written so that the closing has to occur by September 30th, 2027, or the housing authority comes back to CPC to discuss where they are. So we actually gave you a little bit more time. So the grant
No,
agreement.
I was about to explain that, Cecilia.
Yeah,
but
and
okay.
there's no, one clarifying thing, just because I've been listening in, there's no distinction in the grant agreement as to how much money of the 5.5 million is going towards phase 1A or phase 1B. It's just 5.5 million to use on 1A and 1B at the housing authority's discretion as their needs occur.
So of course, Cecilia is right. And so what I was going to say before I was helped is that when you approach that deadline, there's an obligation of the NHA to say, hey, there's this deadline, please come back to CPC because we are the controlling body or our future successors, okay? And say, we're using the 4 million, we haven't started 1B yet, would you please extend it for another 2 years? And acting on behalf of the town, but the CPC, if in your reasonable discretion, you think, oh yeah, we're making good progress, we can, maybe we're not even closed on 1A, but we can see it's right around the corner, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all happens 2 years, and in the 6 months leading up to the end of the 2-year period.
Is there a limitation on how long we can do that if those funds have been committed from like 2024?
There's not a limitation in the contract, no.
I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Could be a stupid question.
There are no stupid questions.
Could that excess money be used to increase the cross subsidy from Linden to CBES?
Indirectly, it already is. In other words, we put the $4 million in at closing. Needham Housing Authority gets $1.1 million in the current developer fee at closing. We get another $1.1 million over the following 10 years of deferred development fee. We've already told you, that's that line item that says 1.1 million, that the only way we can, so we don't have to ask for 1.1 more million from the CPA, which isn't there anyway, that we are going to make up that money with that developer fee. So that's going, you could think of that as the CPA money going in and coming out as the developer fee and then going over to CBEDS, which is exactly what the question was last week, is can't we make it possible for that to happen
And it's so hard to explain this stuff, and there's not enough time that, you know, we didn't say that. Well, you did say that, but people don't realize that. But you seems like I had some head nodding around here, And I will say, the other way around, it's about $500,000 a year of subsidy that's coming from seabeds with the 40 Faircloth units and cross-subsidizing the Linden Street project. This is like a fifth-degree black belt financing strategy that I didn't come up with. You know, it's what Cambridge Housing Authority has figured out, you know, over the last 20 years that we never would have thought of.
Okay.
I mean, it's amazing.
Moving on, just as a general.
And I'd say, sorry, $80 million of new development for affordable housing if we can somehow thread this needle. I mean,
yep,
that's not chopped liver.
Okay, moving on. Next item is discussion of our projects. So just as a general open discussion, does anybody have any questions, anything to add about our projects? I don't know if you have anything you want to put forward, Lauren, but.
I just had a question about the numbers on the NHA request. Has that gone up by another 300,000 since we last spoke?
So that was in the written, we haven't talked about it.
Right, okay.
Yet. But what happened there is Emily said, you know, you should have that resident services above the line. And this is a lean OpEx. And she's pretty well respected. I mean, she's been doing this for decades. And we went back and said, I guess that's probably right. And so we responded point by point in that, what is it, number 4 DD memo here. And so, yes, we're responding to CPC input. We raised it to 3.5. It can't be much more than that because there isn't more. That then funds 100% of the CPA eligible expenses as currently estimated. You know, in other words, we couldn't raise it another 500,000 justifiably at this point because those would, you know, you can't spend the CPA money for anything except the preservation stuff.
Yeah. So what is the shortfall if the 2 housing projects, what was it last time, almost 700,000?
We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
So any other questions? Current projects? I think we've kind of beat every.
I thought all the projects, I don't think we should just talk about housing. I thought the other 4 projects, they did really well, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I mean, I think all of our, from my point of view, I think all my questions are answered. It clearly has community support, unlike maybe what happened with the tennis courts a year ago, for those of you around that. And it's, you know, of great value to the town in those particular areas of the CPA fund, so.
I agree.
I have no further questions about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've done a great job kind of beating the bushes on those projects.
It's nice to see such a good turnout from the public tonight. Actually, somebody was here for every single project, so.
Well, and this is the most I've ever seen
That's what
in
I
a
mean, me
public
too.
hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Next item, minutes for February 26, 2025.
Chair,
Oh, and the 12th, February 12th and the 26th.
There's 2 sets.
I was missing from one of these meetings. Is it both?
Yeah, that don't matter.
Oh,
You can still vote.
oh, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I
watched the
move
meeting.
acceptance of the minutes of February 12th and February 26th.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, unanimous. Okay, the last item, we really didn't schedule, but it is related to your question, about, you know, how much money and whatever. So like next week on the 19th, we're gonna get together and deliberate. And this is, I think, going to be a very serious meeting, and I think well, I feel like we're on a jury, and it's like, you know, I'm looking at this as like I'm the foreman of the jury.
Well, the last two meetings we've left, people are like, good luck.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
don't envy you, good luck.
No, I've been soliciting advice from people about, you know, how to handle this, because, you know, I don't recall, at least in my experience, whether the CPC has really faced this many projects and, you know, the real competition for funds and all that. So I think that's going to be difficult. So what I'd like to do, our last item tonight, is I made a list of things that I thought we should be considering. And I just wanted to put this out to you all, so at least you can see some things that are important to me. I got some input from Lauren and Maureen. And if there's any other input that you want to provide tonight, then I think that would be great. So basically, I listed, you know, some things that we need to consider. And then at the end, I've been kind of going over in my head some logistics for our deliberation. You know, how are we going to go about this? And I'd really appreciate some input from you all. I have a couple ideas, but again, I'd like to get some input. So let me just rattle off, you know, some of my thoughts here, but, you know, bear in mind, these are my thoughts with some input, and I'm looking for input. And, you know, if you don't have a chance, or, you know, it doesn't come to mind tonight, maybe you could send a note to Lauren. And I guess you could distribute this if you want. And also, well, I'll get that in a second. So, you know, we all know we have limited funding available. We have 6 applications, 2 housing applications totaling $7 million, roughly. Recreation applications totaling $474,000, and a historical application about $49 million. If you look at the breakdown, you know, if you read Cecilia's memo, and also we prepared like a one-page summary. There is potentially $6.5 million available for housing and recreation, although there are specific buckets. But you know, recreation can take money from free cash and from general reserve, but housing can also take money from the housing reserve. So historical, the 49,000, that comes from a separate bucket. So that's really, I mean, we could, if we decide to fund a historical project, you know, we could take that off the table in terms of slicing up the hamburger or the baby.
Can you send us again the ingredients or the menu? Like, you know, your one-page summary, Cecilia's previous memo. That'll be helpful for,
Yeah, we
know,
can do that.
We've got a few days.
And then, you know,
we could think about it.
If this is updated, I'll send this to you. So, okay, so, yeah, so we'll get those out there. Okay, so here's some things that I think we need to consider. And some of these are obvious, right? Community need and support, compliance with the CPC plan and our goals, past funding of projects. Now, I did my own little analysis of, you know, what's been spent in the past, or what's been awarded in the past. And this includes the total amount of an award that was bonded, you know, not necessarily what's actually been dispersed, right? And since, you know, 2006, we're looking at housing, 23%, recreation, 43%, open space, 5%, and historical, 29%. The adjustments I made were like on open space, because some of the projects that were listed as open space were really recreation projects. Because open space that I've learned this year is really limited in terms of what, excuse me?
What are those percentages again? I didn't quite get.
Yeah, housing 23%, recreation 43%, open space 5%, and historical 29%. The reason historical is so high is the two projects at Town Hall. And, yeah, I added in what the award was, not what the monthly or the yearly.
How long is this period, David?
2006 is, yeah, since inception, and it was based on a list that you had sent out when we were looking at, retro acknowledgement. But I made some adjustments. I mean, you're free to make whatever adjustments you want, but I think, the gist of it is there. All right. Timing, when is the money actually needed based on what we know about these projects? What's the impact if we reduce funding, compared to what is asked, especially, what's the impact on the schedule? Would the project move forward? What's the probability of the project moving forward with reduced funding? Obviously, with no funding, the project might not move forward, but, impact on other projects. I think, in that category, we have the Linden dependency on seabeds. This is important too. What are the options that the applicant would have to obtain additional funding from other sources should there be a shortfall in what their request is? Another item is assessment of the proposed budgets. I think our consultant, Emily, has dug into both of the budgets for the housing projects. And, on one case, I think my interpretation is that she said it was too lean. Another case, she implied it was kind of fat. So I think that's, incidentally, we asked Emily to update her memo. She did send in a new pro forma analysis and whatever on the changes that were made based on information that Needham Housing Authority had submitted, but I would like her to update the memo so that we have it before our meeting next week.
Dave,
Yeah.
she actually did, and she sent it just before this meeting.
Okay,
So we
that's-
didn't have a chance to circulate it.
That's great. Because, between now and the next meeting, we don't have a lot of time. Okay, so at our meeting, well, what else? That's all I have. So if if anybody here has any other suggestions as to things that we should consider. The reason I'm doing this is I want to get it in your minds to be thinking about this, right? Because at the meeting, and this gets into logistics, at the meeting next week, number one, I guess we won't have any new information other than Emily's memo, right?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, we don't have any outstanding requests. I want to reiterate what the constraints we have are. Emily, we're going to ask her to be available at least the first part of the meeting in case there's any questions. Okay. The next thing I would like to do is query each member about how you feel about the projects. I'd like to ask, are there any projects that we don't want to move forward on? Just to get a general sense there. Are there any projects that we definitely want to move forward on with the full funding? And then we can talk about any specific project. Well, I'm just kind of lay out a process. That's what I'm trying to get at. So we can have like a general discussion. Cecilia is going to prepare a memo where she's going to look at different scenarios, right? But I think that will be useful towards the end, but I would like us to discuss the issues and get to a sense of where we want to go before we go to Cecilia's scenarios, because I think, you know, we don't want to get, what's the word, you know, in psychological research where you hit, excuse me?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know if
No, where somebody gives you a number and then that gets stuck in your head, you know? Yeah.
Leading us to a certain
Yeah, so,
conclusion.
yeah, we don't want to do
Yeah.
that, you know, okay. So then at last we vote on each project, but, you know, there's still, you know, some things that maybe we could
It's
do.
not binary. It's not everything is up or down.
Yeah, yeah. So you know, I'm the kind of person that I'd like to have a process and lay it out, but, you know, I
I feel
gotta.
like we're
be-
gonna need a whiteboard next
Yeah.
to our next with, you
No, I gotta be
know,
honest, I'm kind of stuck here, because, you know, I know sometimes people are reluctant to speak at a public hearing, you know, and I know that, you know, some people speak louder than others, you know, so I'm just trying to think about how we could conduct this in a fair manner and come to a good conclusion that we all could support, because I'd like to see the votes be unanimous, you know, that would be the goal. So that's my little spiel. If you all have any thoughts or suggestions, I, you know, would really appreciate it.
I think what you laid out is a great framework for us to consider. Starting with the last first, in the sense that, and if you don't want to have the conversation now, that's fine. But I think all projects are worthy. They all qualify. I want to fund all of them. And I just want to get clarity on the financial picture. And then with your, you know, review evaluation criteria that you've laid out, give thought to, you know, whether or not we have the capacity to fund it, full funding, and if not, where to square it off. But I have some questions, which I may send to you guys for Emily and or to, you know, for Reg, but we can handle that off, you know, offline. But yeah, but you know, that's how I intend to move forward.
You know, if you remember this memo here, you know, it lays out. We updated it. There's housing requests are $7 million total. And the recreation requests are about let's say 475 roughly.
Including history?
No, history is separate. I think, you know, history is yes or no.
Yep.
That's a separate budget and it's not gonna,
Right.
okay? So, yeah, those are the numbers, you know,
So we're at 7.5 in total requested and 6.5 available.
something like that.
Well,
Yeah.
there's been an increase in CVED's request, so that this will have to be
No, I
updated.
updated it.
Oh, you did?
Yep. And I rounded the numbers. So, yeah, it's like 475 roughly. And we have, that we could use for the everything but history is
So do we,
6.5.
so of the 6.5
Yeah.
Differential.
of the 6.5 million, does that mean that we're leaving no reserve of any kind? Every penny? And then,
Well, there is a reserve.
There's a little bit.
There's a reserve. No?
so Cecilia, did you have
Yeah, so
do you
if,
have a recommendation whether or not we should leave a little something?
so after seeing some more numbers come in, there is sufficient funding. We feel comfortable recommending to use all of the free cash and the receipts that would have been reserved in FY 26 towards the towards the community housing bucket and towards the FY 26 general reserve. That will leave you with no money in the housing bucket and no money in the general reserve for next year's projects. But you could be comfortable allocating all $2,099,043 towards projects this year.
In other words, although we were waiting to hear if we needed to hold back, they determined that we no longer need to hold back on what the estimated
So
receipts are.
we're using everything. Yeah, this question has come up, is that shortchanging next year? Well, I guess,
Yeah.
right?
These are the
But-
projects before.
No,
us now,
no,
so
but,
it's
but,
like,
but it's like,
Yeah.
taking the money that came in this year and not spending it or pushing it next year. I mean, all that is, that's what this committee has been doing traditionally, right? But that's not necessarily what other committees have done, There's no, no legal or.
Requirement that
Yeah,
you do that,
requirement that
right?
you can't do that. So yeah, next year, the CPC will have less money to work with. The CPC would get about, in my, ballpark terms, maybe 4 million a year. And of that, probably like 1.2 is cut right off the top because of debt service, right? And then you have some mandated reserves. You don't need to do historical because the debt service takes care of that. You have maybe 450 going to open space, 800 going to housing. But, it'll leave, roughly 2 million for housing and recreation next year.
But I would just say something I've said consistently since day one on the CPC. If it doesn't, I'd phrase it another way. We're putting all the available resources to work for the town of Needham, however it gets allocated, on worthy projects. I haven't seen this many worthy projects actually in one cycle as this. And that money doesn't do any good for anybody sitting in a savings account earning 1% interest. And next year is next year.
The only legal requirement is to, in some capacity, spend 10% of that year's receipts towards the 3 different buckets. Spending can count as towards a project, which it would be in this case towards the housing project. Putting it in a reserve fund if there's no appropriate project to spend it on, which is what we've had to do with open space for many years because we just haven't had an open space project in a few years, or towards the debt service, which is what we do with historic. So it really is flexible. Like Dave and Reg have said, we'll get more money next year and we'll allocate 10%, 11%, 22% as we had been in the case of the community housing reserve.
So I will mention one other thing, and that is with regard to this loan issue that Emily has been promoting for the past couple of years. Loaning. A loan. That potentially could have money come back, and she seems to support it. There's not enough time to work out the details for anything like that this year. I don't think that would change anything anyway, but I just wanted to mention it, that the town decided that they're gonna put that on the agenda for the goal setting of the select board next year, because the select board actually kind of controls the Affordable Housing Trust, and that would have to, be part of any kind of loan thing. So I guess they have an annual retreat in the summer, or whatever, and yeah, and so they're gonna put that on, and they're also gonna talk about bonding too, because bonding would have solved our problem, but, I don't want to really get into that, but there are, the dialogue should continue on that, so hopefully that will happen. So that's all I have to say with regard to this.
Send out
Yeah.
with those bullet points and things that.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
And if there's anything I forget, just email me. But I've been trying to keep a good list.
All right, any other comments? I got my motion guy here.
Motion guy. Motion guy.
Yeah, we
Yeah, we did, yeah.
That was not a motion.
Wow.
Mr. Chair, I move adjournment.
I'll second.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.